Hi, fifth graders. It's Mrs. Burke here. I'm back with another lesson. Today we're going to work on subtraction of fractions, or specifically mixed numbers, with renaming. Now, little pep talk. This is definitely one of the more challenging parts of fractions. This will feel more challenging than multiplying fractions, than dividing fractions. This idea of renaming them takes some practice. So if it's tough for you at first, don't get frustrated. It should feel tough. But the more you practice, the better you'll get. So I wanted to walk you through two different strategies you can use when renaming mixed numbers to subtract. And in the end, I just want you to pick whatever strategy you feel more comfortable with. But I will show you two of them to give you a little bit of choice. So here is our first strategy, and it's renaming the first mixed number. Now, the reason today's lesson is going to be different from the one that you watched the other day is because the other day we were subtracting fractions, and let's say, just like a quick refresher, we had 5.5 minus 3 and 1, 6. We learned, okay, we were going to find a common denominator for them. So eventually, I'm doing a shortcut here, but eventually they both would have turned into 6. And this would have been 3, 6. And this would have stayed 1, 6. So when we subtracted them, 3, 6 minus 1, 6 is 2, 6. 5 wholes minus 3 wholes is 2 wholes. And you could have even renamed that 2 1/3. Now, here, when we're subtracting, you can see that we had 3, 6, and we were taking away 1, 6, so we just do our regular subtraction. But there's going to be a time where you might have the opposite. Let's say you might have 3, 6. No, you might have 5 and 1, 6, and you need to take away 3, 6. This is going to require some extra work, because if we have 1, 6, we're not able to take away 3, 6 unless we regroup, but in fractions they call it renaming these fractions. So we're going to have to do some work with this whole number here. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of that right now. So for today's strategy, the first one, we're renaming the first mixed number. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at an example. We have 4 3/8. And we're going to take away 3 1/2. Now, I want you to start off by doing the same steps we did the other day for finding equivalent fractions. We need to first find the common denominator. So, I have 8ths and I have halves. Let's see what our common denominator will be. 8, 16, 24, 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay. So you can see we do have a common denominator, and it's going to be 8. So now I'm going to rewrite my fractions, and like this. And now I'm going to make the equivalent fraction by using the common denominator. So this, if it becomes 8ths, it's going to stay the same. It already was 8ths. This one's going to have to do a little changing. It was halves. To turn it into 8ths, I have to multiply by 4. So I'll multiply my numerator by 4. And I get 4 8ths. Now, herein lies the problem. I have 4 3/8, and I want to take away 4 of the 8ths. The reason this is tricky is because if I have right here, I'll show you. If I'm showing you 3/8, I can't just subtract 4 8ths away from this because I don't have 4 8ths in this fraction. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these wholes and we're going to make it into parts, okay? And what essentially that's going to end up doing is making this 3/8 an improper fraction. So watch how we're going to do this. I'm going to take one of these wholes away, and I'm going to rename it or regroup it. So this one whole, I'm actually going to make it into parts. And the parts that I'm going to work with are 8. So if I'm taking a whole and I'm turning it into something with 8 parts, if I have the whole thing, I have all 8 parts. So essentially I'm taking 3/3 plus an extra 8/8. 3/3 and 8 out of 8, which is a whole, will give us that 4. But I already had 3/8 to start. So instead of now having just 3 wholes and 3/8, I have the 8/8 plus 3 more, 8/8, 9/8, 10/8, 11/8. So I have 3 and 11/8. I just renamed 4 and 3/8 to 3 and 11/8 because I took the whole away and I turned it instead into parts, 8/8 parts. And I added it to what I already had, the 3/8. So 8 plus 3 more 8s equals 11/8. Now, I'm not touching, well, I renamed it. I'm not going to touch this. This is going to stay exactly the same. I'm going to take away 3 and 4/8. And now I can actually just do the subtraction because look, I made this an improper fraction. It has way more than it needs to be a whole. So 11/8 take away 4/8 is 7/8. And then I have 3 wholes. If I take away 3 wholes, I don't have any wholes. So my answer stands at just 7/8. Now I understand that might have seemed a little confusing or went really fast. We're gonna keep practicing, so don't worry. Okay. Now, another strategy we can use, strategy number 2, rename both mixed numbers as fractions. So we're going to make the mixed number here that we're working with into fractions, 2 improper fractions. So I have 3 and 2/3 minus 1 and 10/12. I'm going to write that on here. 3 and 2/3 minus 1 and 10/12. Now the other day we practiced flipping a mixed number into a fraction. Let's do that. So, step 1, we have to find a common denominator. We don't have that yet. So, my common denominator, I'll take thirds and 12ths. 3, 6, 9, 12. So up right away. So I'm going to make them both into equivalent fractions with a denominator of 12ths. So my 3 and 2/3 is going to become 3 and something 12ths. I had 3 times 4 will give me the 12. 2 times 4 is 8. And I'm taking away 1 and 10/12ths. Now, the reason I need to regroup or rename these fractions is because if I have 8/12ths, I can't take away 10/12ths. I don't have 10. So watch this strategy. I'm gonna turn this into an improper fraction. Now, how do I do that? If you remember from our lesson a couple of days ago, you can always rewatch that lesson if you're having trouble with this part. But we're gonna multiply our denominator times our whole number and then add on our numerator. So 12 times 3, 12, 24, 36. If I add 8 more to 36, I'm going to get 44. Now, what size are those 44 parts? 12ths. So 3 and 8/12 is equivalent to 44 12ths. Now, I'm going to change this one using the same strategy, renaming this into an improper fraction. 12 times 1 is 12. Plus 10 more is 22. And what unit? 22 12ths. And now all I have to do is subtract them. 44 minus 22 equals 22. So my answer is 22 12ths. But you should notice something about that. It's still an improper fraction. So now I have to change this back into my mixed number. So if you feel comfortable with going back and forth between mixed numbers and improper fractions, this is going to be an awesome strategy for you. If you're not comfortable yet, I suggest either practicing or you can always do the first strategy we saw. All right, so I can count by 12 to see how many holes. 12, that would be 1 hole. 24. 24 would give me 2 holes, but I only have 22. So I'm going to have 1 hole, and then if I take 12 away from this, I'm still left with 10 twelfths. So 22 twelfths renamed as a mixed number is 1 and 10 twelfths, which would be our answer. All right. Hope your head's not spinning yet. Like I said, this is tough. We just keep practice, practice, practice. Practice makes perfect. All right. We're going to do this next one. And I'm going to show it to you both strategies. I might move a little quickly. You can zero in on one strategy that you like and, kind of slow that down, or just watch them both. But I have 5.5 minus 2 3/4. So strategy 1, I'm going to just rename the first mixed number. So I have 5.5 minus 2 3/4. You should remember, got to find a common denominator. So I have, and I write this every single time. I'm a math teacher, doesn't matter. I still write down my multiples. I have halves and fourths. 2, 4, 6, 8, 4, 8, 12. I have a couple of common multiples, but I want the smallest one. So I'm going to go with fourths. All right. So now I'm going to make these equivalent fractions. 5, and let's change these to fourths. It used to be halves. I times it by 2 to make it fourths. 1 times 2 is 2. And now I'm going to take away 2, and this is going to stay 3/4 because it was already fourths. You don't have to change it. Now, if I have 2/4, I can't take away 3/4. So I'm going to rename it. I'm going to take the whole away from here, and I'm going to add a whole to the 2/4 I already had. 1 whole would be 4/4, right? The 5, if I took the whole away, and I'm not actually taking it away, but I'm changing it into 4/4. Now, take my 4/4, add it to the 2/4 I already had, and now I have 4 6/4. Take away 2 3/4. 6/4 minus 3/4 is 3/4. 4 holes minus 2 holes is 2 holes. So 2 3/4. This is a great strategy if you're not comfortable with going back and forth between mixed numbers and improper. Here, you're still staying with your mixed number. You're just taking a whole away, or you're regrouping a whole. Let me show you the same question using strategy 2, renaming both as mixed numbers. No, as improper fractions. They are mixed numbers. All right, I still have to find the common denominator. We said it was going to be 4. I'm still going to rename them. 5 2/4 minus 2 3/4. And we know I can't take 3/4 away from 2/4. So let me rename it by multiplying my whole number times my denominator. 5 times 4 is 20. And adding my numerator, 22. 22 what? Fourths. That doesn't change. And now, my denominator times my whole number. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 3 more is 11. And again, my denominator is not changing, 11/4. If I want to now subtract, 22 minus 11 is 11, and there's still fourths. All right, now I have an improper fraction, so I have to take my improper fraction and make it back into a mixed number by doing 11 divided by 4, Mr. Corso's favorite thing. Fraction line is a division sign. So 4 make a whole, 4, 8, I can make 2 holes. And then I would have 9, 10, 11, 3 left over. 2 3/4, which was the same difference we got before. Okay, I'm going to give you one question, and I want you to try it on your own. You can use either strategy. You want bonus points? Try both strategies. See if you get the same answer. So for this part, I'll show you the question. You might want to pause. This so you have some time to do the work and you're not feeling rushed. So you can pause this for as long as you want. I'll leave this up here for like 15, 20 seconds, but remember to start off, you need to first find a common denominator. Okay, so I'm moving quickly, but just pause the video if you're not ready to go over it. But we're gonna start going over it. You should have found your common denominator. Hopefully you listed your multiples. And you should have gotten 10 as your least common multiple. So now let's rename it. 4 and a 5th. Let's turn it into tenths. That's the same as 4 and how many tenths? 5 times 2 is 10. 1 times 2 is 2. And then I had 2 and 8 tenths. Luckily, it's already tenths, so we don't even have to rename it an equivalent fraction. It just stays the same. Now, if I have 2 tenths, I can't take 8 tenths away. So strategy 1, take a whole away from here. And I'm going to turn it into 10 tenths. Where did the 10 come from? My denominator tells me how many make a whole. 10. So 10 tenths, I changed my whole into a fraction. I have 10 new tenths. I already had 2 tenths, so now I have 12 tenths. And my second fraction staying exactly the same, minus 2 and 8 tenths. All right, so now I can do the work. 12 minus 8 is going to leave me with 4 tenths. 3 wholes minus 2 wholes is going to leave me with 1 whole. I can simplify this. I can divide both by 2. And then I'm going to get 1 and 2 fifths. Now let's watch the same thing using the second strategy. I'm going to keep my common multiples. That doesn't change. And then when I take 4 and a fifth, it's still going to be equivalent to 4 and 2 tenths. And my 2 and 8 tenths stays 2 and 8 tenths. Now with the second strategy, we are renaming both. So I'm going to multiply my denominator times my whole number. 10 times 4 is 40, plus 2 more is 42 tenths. 2 times 10 is 20, plus 8 more is 28 tenths. Notice my denominator does not get touched. It stays the units of tenths. Okay, next I'm going to subtract. 42 minus 28 is going to give me 14 tenths. How can I rename that? Divide, or know that every whole is going to be 10. So 10, 20, I don't have 20, I only have 14. So I do have 1 whole plus 4 extra, which is 1 and 4 tenths. And if we simplify that, 1 and 1 fifth. So I know this isn't easy, but the more you practice it, the better you'll get. If you have your Go Math book at home or your Think Central account, pick 2 or 3 questions, grab them right off the paper and see how you do. The more you practice, the quicker and the better you'll get. Just remember, stay neat with your work, organize it, and check for silly errors, okay? I'm proud of you. I know you're working super hard and hoping to see you guys super soon. Miss you a ton. Bye, guys.